No, thanks, Chris. And Annie, what processes would you encourage us to rethink then, given that psychological backdrop?
So whether they're processes, I think there are definitely four things that leaders in organisations should be focusing on now. I call them the four C's, and I would say it's culture, care, communication, creativity, collaboration. And if we just quickly run through those, culture, leaders have got to make culture visible. So at every opportunity when they're communicating with people, they should be calling it out. So if you've got a new client win, if a team have done something fantastic or an individual, point out what's gone well, but in the context of what the values of the organization are. So that team did fantastically well because they really collaborated, because that's one of your key values. And I think another thing is also to really remind people of what the purpose of the organisation is, to remind people why they're getting up every day to do what they're doing, remind people of how that links to the overall purpose. I heard a great story about a very senior executive at Walmart. And every week when he had his team meeting, the first thing they would look at is how much money they were saving their customers, because that's what Walmart is about. It wasn't looking about how much money Walmart was making. How much money are they saving their customers? A really lovely way of reminding people of the purpose. I think the other thing, and this is, I think, a great opportunity, is that we really need to be thinking about our organisational structures in this new COVID world, because we are going to have a hybrid way of working, people at home, people at the office, whatever. And this is a great opportunity to sit down with every single individual in an organisation and look at what are the tasks that make up their role, and look at what can be done at home, what has to be done in the office, what might be able to be done by machine learning, whatever, for whatever reason. And the reason why this is so good is there's lots of research, particularly that by two Harvard professors called McGregor and Doshi. And they've looked at what makes high performing cultures, and in particular what really motivates employees. And they've showed that the number one driver or number one motivator for employees is having some input into the creation of their roles, the design of their roles. So now more than ever, this is a fantastic opportunity to really sit down with your employees and do that. And you'll really get that motivation going. And of course, that in itself will end up in having a more productive organization. So that's culture. Care, I think, is really important. And interestingly, culture actually comes from the word cultus in Latin, which means to care. And I think there are two aspects. One is that I think leaders need to take care of themselves. It's the old thing like being on a plane, put your face mask on first before you try and help others. And I think we have to recognise that leaders have been under enormous stress themselves, so they've got to take care of themselves. But then they've really got to hold the stress and the anxiety of the whole organisation. And they've got to show real compassion, not just empathy. And compassion means that you're motivated to do something, not just to, agree or identify with somebody. And I think one of the things that they really ought to be doing is I see that it comes up as a thing here on the poll, understanding employee needs and challenges has got the most answers as being the biggest challenge. Could not agree more. Every single line manager should be sitting down with each of their individual team members and really understanding their own personal circumstances now. Do they have to work from home because they're shielding? Do they have to work from home because they've got young children? What are the particular circumstances impacting them? Are they someone who suffers from stress and anxiety more than other people? Because we're all on different scales. And then making sure those people get the right support and help that they need. And it will be individual. And that's why every line manager, I think, has a responsibility to do. They also have to be much more aware of what really being inclusive means. Because if you happen to be going in the office, are you favouring people who also happen to be in the office around you rather than the people who have to stay at home? Are they getting more of the challenging work, the more promotion opportunities or whatever? So again, we really have to understand the individual circumstances of every employee. And that's also how you help create this psychologically safe workplace. And I know the Financial Conduct Authority, particularly for financial services, said is that is the most critical ingredient to ensuring that financial services companies successfully navigate their way through the pandemic, making it safe for people to take that interpersonal risk to speak up. And then communication is absolutely critical. So leaders, again, need to be telling a very compelling narrative about what's going on for people, trying to get people to make sense of what's happening in the organisation right now, being really transparent about the challenges and the changes that are going to have to take place. but also really setting out a very compelling vision of an achievable future. This is not a time for having strategies that are moonshots. That's only going to raise level of levels of stress and anxiety. So an achievable future that everyone can achieve. And then it's also then regularly, once a week, going out and telling people the progress is being made towards that achievable future. And even when you haven't got something to say, just making that commitment to speak once a week really, again, helps reduce the stress and anxiety of people. So that's really important. And then the last thing I would say is this creativity and collaboration. Employees will have some really great ideas about how you can deliver on that achievable future. And I think platforms today that allow the many to the many conversation rather than just top down are really what organizations need to be looking at. And Runway, again, is a classic example. You know, surface those great ideas from people about what they can be doing, how they can be working together, because creating that sense of we're all in this together and together we can do something much more better than we can on our own also really helps reduce the stress and anxiety in organizations. And so those kind of like wider platforms that bring people together, I think are really important right now. And employees ought to be experimenting with these new platforms and these new tips. Now is the best time. Try different things, see what works. And even if things don't work, you'll learn so much from it too.